But as I was saying, she charges this big hit, and the crutch of this move, she's invisible until you get close to her. So you have an idea where she's gone, but you don't quite know entirely because it differs. So she jumps across to the wall because apparently I've spaced this particular part of this encounter not as well as I should have. And she's charging this move, and I run up to her. And I start strafing around her only to realise I can't get to her back to backstab her. So I can't interrupt this move in the way I wanted to capitalise on damage. And there's a moment of sheer panic in my brain. This is all happening at 1,000,000 miles a second, because this is a couple of seconds in game time, where I realise I do not have the opportunity to punish this the way I need to, and I do not have enough time now to dilly-dally, or I'm going to die. So I swing my weapon. And because this is a Souls game, all the swings are very methodical, they take a little bit longer than they should. You know, they've got a lot of startup frames, a lot of recovery, all that kind of stuff. And this swing is happening just as she starts to swing at me. And there's just this beautiful renaissance moment where you realise that I'm going to hit the wall and rebound a fraction of an inch away from where her hurtbox is to hurt her and interrupt what she's doing. And I'm going to recoil, and she's going to hit me and kill me. And that's what happened. It was perfect, is what it was. Complete, perfect design. By the way, that's the phase that you can skip, guys. Just rush to the gravity well. You do not have to fight those two enemies. And now we're moving towards the area that leads to the final boss. But don't get too excited, guys, because it's terrible. That perfect random moment of luck in video games is the thing that I can't wait till we can get away from that, where at every moment that just can't happen. And if we break it down and we really get into it, there's a million things I could have done instead. I could have reacted faster. I could have controlled her positioning in the room so she couldn't have got against a wall. She could have jumped a million different places. She just jumped in that perfect place. I could have waited and then tried to dodge what she does, which is this really massive AoE like spike of doom, and it's a tough thing to dodge, but you can dodge it. So there is a ton of stuff I could have done, but at the time it felt like that random piece of just serendipitous bullshit to kill me. And this happens in all video games. You might find it coming up in the firefight that's about to take place. I think it's the last checkpoint before you do the sequence, has you killing a lot of enemies, and then you have an architect attacking you at the same time. And the more you rush, the more enemies there are. So it's one of those things where you want to really wean them down quickly, or you'll just get killed by sloppy damage. And there are these moments where it syncs up perfectly, where somebody in front of you, there's two observers pushing you backwards, and as you're backing up into where the architect is lasering the platform, so you'll back up directly into where he's firing, and it's just that perfect synchronous violence that ends the player. You know, that perfect frame-perfect punish in a fighting game, where the computer read that you were doing a 5-frame move, and they did a 4-frame move to beat it, and you never stood a chance, because this all happened quicker than the brain can process it and react. You know, it feels like that. And here's a really important question, because you might think that this is just, you know, pointless rambling about video games, which it is, but hopefully you enjoy it, because if not, you will not like my channel. The question I want to propose now, and I'd love an answer if you can think about it, guys, because I love the interaction when people are digging deep into mechanics, because it's fascinating, and I love different perspectives. But do you think if we do get to a day where that randomness is gone, do you think we'll miss it? Do you think we'll come to look at it as the thing that made it what it was, to make it the difficulty, to make it the challenge, the thing that meant we kept coming back? Oh, by the way, this is another Ascendant fight, so it's another 15-minute fight that's not very fun or challenging, and it sucks, it does, because this is a cool fight. I love the environment, I love the setup, I love the high-flying nature of the walkways, I love every single enemy in this room, except for the one who's horribly designed. And I know I'm going to get somebody who defends the Cardinal Ascendant particular enemy, him right there, because those people do it all the time on YouTube videos, but I want you to just take a step away from your penis being all the way inside the disc, and just acknowledge that if he worked better, all of this would work better, and it would be a more enjoyable experience for you as well. Even though you seem to get some kind of strange pleasure from this garbage tier enemy, if it was more conducive to an interesting, challenging enemy, everybody would benefit. But as it stands, he's not even scary. I don't fear this dude at all. He's literally crap. He's just crap. That's what he is. Like, he's just awkward. That's all he is. He's just a dude who just will not go away. He's that one friend who's just stopped the night and you want them to leave so that you can get on with your day, but they won't leave. And it gets really awkward. And you just kind of, at the time, you're thinking of all the things you could be doing that you'd really like to do, but you can't be the dick friend who asks them to leave. So you're hoping that they kind of push that idea out themselves, but they just show no will to ever do that. That's what this guy is. That's exactly what this guy is. This is the dude who doesn't put his bins out on the bin day and then complains that they only pick it up one day a week. This is the guy. Him. This is the dude who spits on your burgers in fast food. This is who it is, this person right now. And look at it. Most dangerous enemy in the game. I'm stood out of cover staring at him because it's a terrible, terrible piece of design. But back to what we were saying. This idea of missing imperfections. Like, I believe that there are no perfect games, and I also believe that it's the imperfections that generally make the game so good. I've talked about it in various ways across the many videos that I've made. And Quantum Break is a really interesting game for me. A fascinating game. And if you're not aware of what it is... by the way, guys, this is the final boss. All it is a gauntlet of enemies while an architect shoots at you, and you have to touch a few different hold Y or hold triangle moments, and that's it. And the architect is going to signpost its attacks by these massive swathing lights that are red. If you're outside of those areas of effect, they won't touch you. And the only real dangerous aspect here is all the observers. Everything else is very manageable. The one time it gets dangerous is when you actually can attack the architect, because then he will do this bukkake laser that kills you almost instantly, and he'll also do a salvo where he just bombs the platform. But as long as you follow the positions that I'm going to take up, and you put yourself in some intelligent spots, you're not going to have too much of an issue with this. And that big laser that he does just then, the architect, it will not kill you. I think it just drains all of your shield. I think that's pretty much what it does. It's one of those things that is designed to make it awkward, to make the enemies kill you when you're out of cover. But as long as you keep mobile, you keep intelligent, you keep your spacing good, and you keep yourself in good geometry, this is really, really simple stuff. The last bit's tricky because it's a bad checkpoint and a lot of enemies, and if you get killed, you'll want to retry it quickly and you'll put yourself in a bad spot and you'll just get nullified and killed. But for the most, this is one of the most underwhelming and uninspired endings to a video game I've ever played. And it sucks because I had a lot of fun with this game. I admit it's not a great game, but I had fun with it, and this bit was kind of crappy. But if you don't know, sorry, Quantum Break is a game made by Remedy. Remedy are one of my favourite developers. They are famous for Max Payne and Alan Wake, and maybe something else, but I can't quite remember at this point. Quantum Break, obviously. And they made this game that had a time manipulation element, very similar to Max Payne, but kind of an interesting take on it. They made shooting mechanics that were solid and very enjoyable, but they made a game world and enemies and scripted encounters that just couldn't compete with how capable you are in that game. So it turned a potentially really interesting and awesome first-person shooter into kind of a really simple, average and uninteresting third-person shooter with a pretty fun story. The stories are always legit, regardless of if you like them or not. They're still interesting enough to be worth seeing. But the gameplay-wise, they'd created a game that was too balanced. And what a strange concept that is, right? Because when I make these walkthroughs, I bang my head against video games on their hardest settings, and I find every single thing wrong with them. Every single problem, every single oversight, every single bizarre piece of design. And then in these videos I discuss it, I observe it, and you share your opinions on it as well. And we come to some kind of consensus whether or not we think it helped anything, it inspired anything, or if it was worth doing, or if it was just overlooked. Well, oh, that wasn't good. But look at that, wasn't a big punish, was it? Just populated me back on the land with no shield. It put me back in a death ray zone, which is a bit rude, but don't worry about falling off unless you do it too much. You should be okay. But Quantum Break was one of those games where I couldn't really do that. And admittedly, I will never ever deny that gaming is subjective. Difficulty is also subjective. What you find difficult, I might not. Whereas something that you're great at, I might suck at. It's one of those wonderful things that makes Let's Plays worth watching, that makes everybody's opinion unique. But even then, I think even the worst player of third-person shooters, with just a couple of tips, I think they could get through Quantum Break with very little effort. Because the game is, it's too capable. It's too polished. It's too good. Like, it's too good, and as a result, it hurts the game. It sounds like I'm going insane, doesn't it? It sounds like I've lost it, that my brain has finally imploded, but it's true. Nothing in that game is even remotely taxing enough for just how capable your character is. The shooting mechanics are immaculate. They feel and work really well. You have a plethora of tools that can deal with almost every situation. The pistol in that game has unlimited ammunition and is good enough to do the entire game. Because the game works. It's super balanced, it's super fair. It's too fair. So that leads us to this moment of, we get these games that have these gross oversights and these horrible balances, like the fucking Cardinal in this. Just a garbage enemy, broken and ruined because of how much his shield wrecks this game. His shield is the most overpowered nonsense ever. On normal, you don't even notice that enemy, because you can drop his shields in 2 shots and you can kill him in the next 2. He's an enemy that can be one-cycled effortlessly if you've got a decent gun. But you put it on Insanity, and those incremental sliders that everything's received, well, that shield just received too much, and whatever it is, it broke it. But all these games that have these imperfections, that have these idiosyncrasies, turn out to be the reason why they're interesting. Like, I think that's the reason why I like Dark Souls 1 the best out of all of them. Because that game was jacked. That game had glitches, it had broken stuff, it had stuff that just was ridiculously powerful, it had stuff that was ridiculously pointless. It had this fantastic blend of every kind of thing. And it was a game that didn't work too well either in a lot of ways, but after a ton of patches it worked a lot better. And that's probably a good example, that, of a system getting rid of problems and being better for it. And we like to think, don't we? We like to assume that when you patch and you fix things, that it gets immediately better just in case. You know, just because, by sheer virtue of it happening, it's an improvement. But that's not always true. Like, Dark Souls 3 is one of those that suffered from that recently. There's been a couple of weapons and a couple of options in the game that the PvPers have been very misaligned with. So they've basically thought it needed nerfs. They've made their voice heard, and then the developers changed it. But all that's done then is kill that weapon in any other environment, because it wasn't all that good to begin with in their pool of play. It just showed its colours when it came to stun locking a human or something like that. So there's many examples of changes and tweaks that, instead of improving things, have made things worse. But Quantum Break is such an interesting one. Oh, that was bad there. Did you see my jump just get dropped and I did like a weird 1 inch off the ground levitation move into the water? That was a scary moment, because the water kills you really fast. This is the tough bit right now. Getting past this checkpoint is the hardest part of this sequence. If you can do this, you'll be fine. Just be patient. Make sure you understand what the architect's doing at all times, and do not get too close. That's my advice here, guys. So, Quantum Break. If you want to know more about this and you're curious about this particular conversation, check out that walkthrough. You'll never need it, as I've mentioned, because that game is a joke. But just how the game functions is really profound to me. Because as I was saying, you've got really capable guns, you've got a really capable character, you've got really capable game design, you have time powers that are broken, they are literally god tier, they make you unkillable, untouchable, and just a moving maelstrom of death. And then you have enemies that are so fair that they don't stand a chance. Because you're not fair. You are broken. You are straight ridiculous. You're Messiah complex at that point. And I just keep making hand farts with my hands as I clasp them together. I don't know if that came through on the microphone, but it's, yeah, you know, what can you do? I'm making a point, guys. I'm moving my hands. But at that spawn, I'm going to back all the way up, go over here, because right now we're going to get attacked by the next wave of observers, and there's going to also be the Architect getting in on this. And the moment the Architect becomes a threat and starts actually being damageable is when he's going to start using his other moveset, and his other moveset's very dangerous, so do not get caught with your pants down. Little fun fact, when I was recording this, I was watching Drop Zone with Charlie Sheen, a David Toohey movie, which is completely stupid and preposterous, but I had a lot of fun watching it, and I've not seen it since I was a kid. So there you go, guys. A little look into the behind the scenes of making a walkthrough. It looks like Drac has died. Have you noticed, though? I bring Drac because he's unkillable, and PB's meant to be the weak one, yet she never dies and he always does. It's because he's always getting up close and personal and headbutting things because he's retarded. Quantum Break, though. The big thing with that game is, because it is so balanced, and you are so unbalanced, they needed the enemies to do very specific things. They needed them to come in very specific groups that challenged you in a way that made it work. And I would love to rebalance that game. I really would. It's something that I think would be really interesting to do, and I don't know if there are the mod tools and the capacity to do that, but it's definitely something I'm going to look into, even if it's just a video where I go into detail and I systematically explain the changes that I would do to make that game what it should have been, basically. And I know that sounds incredibly arrogant of me to say so, and I don't want to take anything away from the work that the people at Remedy did, because you did a fantastic job of making a game, but unfortunately they made a game where, because it's arrogant as well to be like, oh, I'm just so good at games, that's why it wasn't difficult. There's probably somebody who found it really challenging, and there will undoubtedly be those people, but I'm just speaking from a level of people who challenge themselves with games, not necessarily a massive high level. Just somebody who plays harder difficulties, has done so for a while. You get to that game and you'll notice what I'm noticing. The only part of that game where you'll probably die is the final boss, because it has this like fucking one-hit kill nonsense and it has a massive AoE on it. That's the only reason to die in that game. Everything else is kind of sublime. Of course, if you're running around like a psychopath, not shooting, trying to hit things and stuff, maybe you'll die, but, you know, let's be serious here, guys.
You made this necessary.
But there's one area of that game that makes it really obvious that you're probably not going to have too much trouble with that game. It's these enemies that have the same time power as you do. They have the ability to shift through time and affect those areas that are kind of warped and caught in time. Those rifts or those tears. I forget what they call them. It's been a while. And that enemy could have literally been the most devilish thing on the planet. They could have been the equivalent of like IS ninjas, or the Shadows from Devil May Cry, or the Fallen from Devil May Cry 3, because everybody loves the Fallen. Like, insert an enemy that you... The Satyrs from from God of War, sorry. Everybody's favourite enemy. Quick, let's spam grab, because if we try and fight it, it's just going to trip us up and be an annoying asshole. Oh, by the way, guys, as soon as we trigger that, I'm going to move all the way back here, because the Architect is going to start being a dick. And all I'm going to do is put myself behind these pillars over here, and I'm going to try and kill the Architect. And it involves falling in the water and getting put out here, but it doesn't hinder me in any way, so it's okay. The reason this bit gets tough is because not only is Architect trying to hurt us right now, but also you're going to get rushed by the observers and by those little bastards that I forget the name of. You know, the ones who can breed the breaches? Those ones. So move away from this dude, kill him as quick as you can, and your team is going to be fighting the enemies that are going to be moving towards where we are. If those enemies get to you here and you're not in good cover, it gets hard. But if you can kill everything before they put you in a bad position, you'll be fine. But this is the toughest part of the sequence by far. And this is where Insanity really shines as well, because you'll notice this thing takes an incredible amount of damage. He really does take damage. And it must be said, folks, I don't think there's been a single good boss fight in this game, because I don't think any of these were bosses. They were just all awkward enemies that weren't very fun to fight, and that's a shame. Like, when fighting a Krogan is more interesting than fighting your big giant set-piece boss, you did something wrong fundamentally with the design. Like, does anybody like the architects? I don't think anybody likes them. They're just generic as hell and boring. And here come the enemies flanking. So remember how I said be careful? These are the ones, the assemblers. This is the guy you want to be careful of. These fellas. But now that we've got rid of the architect, he's not going to attack us now. He'll go back to doing his other move probably. And then you can focus on taking out the observers and just take it slow because there's no checkpoint yet. Yeah, back to the easy phase now. So don't get too overzealous. Get some ammo if you need it, and just take people on. But that enemy in the game that could move through time, he could have been like the double bogeys in Vanquish. It could have been the enemy that single-handedly hands you your ass until you learn how to play that game. But he was too balanced. He barely used his time powers. When he did, he had massive recovery on them. He stood around like a twat when he wasn't doing it. Like, they literally sabotaged the most interesting enemy in the game because they wanted to make it balanced. And it's funny, isn't it, listening to me especially if you've listened to my other walkthroughs. A person who's always on this conquest to analyse things and like get to this point where a game is perfectly balanced, where it's a great challenge but still at the same time really interesting, enjoyable and difficult in the right way. Completely, not condemn, but just question the design choices in Quantum Break because of just how little stress it put on the player. And I don't want anybody to take this as a dig at that game, because Quantum Break, as much as I was incredibly disappointed with it, kind of heartbroken, sorry, bad English, because I was a massive Max Payne fan, and if you've ever played Max Payne on the hardest difficulty, good luck. That game will destroy you. Like, literally. That is one of my all-time favourite games, but that game is hard. And I played it when I was a youngster too. And, well, I say youngster, I was in secondary school, but that's still, you don't know anything when you're that age, and you're generally not that great at games either. You think you are, but you're not. And that stuff is tough, man. Put out my flames with gasoline, where there's fire everywhere and it instantly kills you. A fucking nightmare. Like, we're talking some serious difficulty, and I can't wait to go back to those games, because my memory of them and what they really are probably going to be two different things. But you know what they don't have? That bullshit mechanic in Max Payne 3 where Max puts his arms against the walls instead of shooting. Whoever designed that just doesn't understand third-person shooters at all. And you know why? I know that that's a fact, and it's not a fact, but I like saying that to trigger people. Is because in Quantum Break, designed by the people who invented Max Payne, there is no animation priority that stops you from using your weapons. So some of the animations on that game actually look inferior to good animations because they prioritize player agency, and I love that. That is 100% the design I love. How long is this fight, by the way? Jesus Christ. Shooting tons of dudes. And can you think of anything more boring than rip-off Halo enemies and just generically uninspired sci-fi city place? God, they could have gone so crazy with this and they didn't. Like, imagine in a big unexplained twist you had to fight Shepard and the crew of the old Mass Effect games. That'd be hilarious, wouldn't it? Like the Ketid or the Revenant had read into the human history somehow, and they created synthetic versions of the old heroes and were trying to destroy the image of our heroes, so all this was being done by some like bastardized Shepard. That'd be cool as hell. But what did we get instead? Social justice on a large scale and like transgender friendliness, which... What even is that kind of insult when people start talking about social justice and people that don't like transgenders or want all these other genders to be a thing? Like, at some point, can't we just get to the point where creative people generally have shit opinions, but they make cool stuff? Can we not appreciate the cool stuff without getting the shit opinions mixed in it? Like, every actor I've ever respected, I've listened to in certain interviews and then immediately never wanted to watch them ever again. You know, sometimes your heroes will disappoint you. Sometimes they'll downright fail you. You can't hold them to this strange esteem. Like, developers and artists aren't necessarily people you would want to have a conversation with, but you'd really enjoy their films or their games or their novels or, you know, shit like that. It's just the curse of their art, I guess. But it seems like such a petty thing, doesn't it? This game has enough problems for people to be intentionally looking on social media for extra shit. Like that whole thing about they made the girls look less attractive because feminism. Like, what the fuck? It's just such a stupid thing. And then that one developer who apparently doesn't like white people on Twitter. Like, really? Do we have to talk about this? And I'm proliferating it right now by mentioning it, but at least I'm doing it with a sense of irony, hopefully. It's just stupid. By the way, this spot right here is really good for being safe and keeping the relay being powered. Whenever they do any of the attacks, if you stand behind those pillars, nothing can seemingly hurt you. It's super douchey and cheesy, but it works. And that's what this is all about, guys, finding these dirty strategies to help everybody win. But what's going to be next on the channel as far as walkthroughs? Hopefully not too much too soon, because I want to get back to the new direction that the channel was taking towards the beginning of the year. I want to be making more reviews, I want to be making more one-off videos, and I want to be making more balls deeps, but we've had a ton of games to cover. And I do think that this was worth covering, you know, as much as, once again, people don't really like this game. Insanity was a challenge. It wasn't the hardest Mass Effect by any means, I don't think, but it put me in enough problem spots where I think these videos will be useful for some people, and that's always a great feeling. And to this day, I get comments from people on almost every walkthrough I've ever made who thank you for making them, and thank you for making their life easier. And those kind of comments are invaluable, because they prove that, you know, even if you don't get the most amount of views and you don't have ridiculous amounts of subs, that what you've done has helped somebody. And that's a good feeling. It's a really good feeling. Because some people think that, you know, everybody does this for ego and just to inflate their own illusion of themselves. And I've never really understood that perspective too much. Look at the collision on the fucking box. How the hell does that work? I'm sticking gel explosives on invisible influence. Come on now, video game. I'm telling you, I'm going to have to go to some developer and have a strongly worded conversation about collision and clipping and honesty in invisible walls. Because that's one of the things I can't wait for us to master as well. Collision, once mastered, will be beautiful. I got pissed off at the Demon Prince today because his tits were pushing me when I was trying to run around his belly and get behind him, and he's just walking towards me and pushing me the entire time. I got so mad. Ooh, what a dick. That's one of those things that needs to go. Collision needs to go. We need loading needs to go. We need super fast loading. You know, all the wishing and all the dreaming. We need really, really cool, ridiculously intelligent AI that doesn't take over the internet and enslave us. You know, all these fantastic horizons we've yet to cross, these frontiers to conquer. And a couple of nullifiers just chilling out, like, just what a weird enemy this is. Strafe left and right and be in absolutely no danger. I love this enemy. But do you know what it is, don't you? He's not designed to take you on like this. He's designed to be at the back of a group of enemies, knocking you out of cover. Just being like, so everybody else can shoot you. He is the fly in the face that you can't quite swat. That's what he's designed to be. And that's the end of the game, guys. There's no Archon fight. There's no fight against the knobhead that you've been chasing the full game. There's no interesting, awesome spectacle. There's nothing. Just a shitty gauntlet that lasts too long and is actually pretty difficult. There you go. Why they designed it that way, I will never know, but that was Mass Effect Andromeda. I hope it helped. I hope you enjoyed it. And if not, you know, try and get your money back. It might help. Yeah, you take care now.